Look, I know I'm a man who needs no introduction, but that really was no introduction.
Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. Okay, immediate thoughts. Tony Stark is definitely dead.
Thank you, and welcome to the Stark Expo.
To get myself ready. You're not gonna be ready. But I need to be ready. No! What was your favourite one? I cannot wait. Can't wait. I need more Iron Man in my life. Iron Man cup and it's got a little teeny cube in it. Look at this. Look at this. Damn. What am I supposed to do with that?
Well, gotta go save the world and stuff. You work hard.
Endgame. So, Endgame is out now. We have the movie. I have seen the movie. I saw the movie a couple of weeks ago. I haven't done this review until now because I needed time to process what I watched. As you can see from the title of this video, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the sad. And I think I'm going to leave the sad till last because it still hurts to talk about. Obviously you'd have seen the disclaimer at the start of this video, but just in case you missed it somehow and you're still here, this video contains spoilers, big spoilers. Like, I'm going to talk about the film in detail, so please, if you haven't seen the film and you don't want to get spoiled, please don't carry on watching this video. Go away and then come back when you've seen the movie and then we can talk about it and it'll be all good and then there's no spoilers here. Yay. So let's start with the good, because we always want to start with the good. We do the good stuff, then the bad stuff, and then talk about the stuff that ruined my life. Cool. I really liked seeing, I didn't like seeing Clint's whole family get dusted, but I liked that opening to show us why he became Ronin. I also feel like the Ronin thing was really glossed over. Like, he was a literal assassin and just like, we'll just ignore that. Like, come on, Clint. That, and also that opening, they just like went for Thanos like immediately and I was like, yes mate. All about him being on his little farm and thinking that he'd done his job, and that was quite good actually. I quite like the way they did that. Like, a lot of people were saying in that scene it made you kind of feel for Thanos a little bit, which like I get why, and I thought that was really good. My favourite parts of this film were the little bits. There were little moments in this film which just were really meant a lot to me and really hit me in the feels, from them being references to past movies, to the music that was used, and to just how the scenes went down and how they came out, and I really loved that. Some of my favourite ones were when they were in the final battle. Captain America called Spider-Man Queens, and then Peter actually used instant kill in that battle as well, which was like, holy shit, like he does it and he just goes, and I was like, yes lads. Also, when Tony gives back the shield to Steve, the music from the first Avenger plays over the top, and that was wonderful. I really liked that. That was a really really nice touch because it blended in with the music that was already in the scene, but just was really nice, and I really liked the way that was done. Also was Thor and Tony saying about using the lightning to make his repulsor stronger. That was so cool. I loved that they did that. Obviously that was a throwback to the first Avengers, and it was so cool to see that, and just that whole scene where it started with Thor, Tony and Steve walking into that battle was amazing. You know, the big three ready to fight, going to fight, and even though they were kind of at that point were kind of all on their own and had kind of so much that was they really sort of didn't stand much of a chance, them going out to fight on that battlefield and fighting together like was promised in Age of Ultron, and that hasn't happened since then, which I really liked. I really liked that. We also, Steve and Mjolnir, that was insane. Like, and then that was funny when he was like, no, you have the little one. That was really good to show that he was worthy. I liked Steve and Tony's whole reunion as well, but I did also love Tony just absolutely ripping him a new one at the very beginning, because I feel like that needed to be said. He needed to get that out. So much has happened between them, and I think Steve is now aware of kind of the impact that he had on that, and Tony definitely does regret some stuff as well, but I know that Steve is aware of kind of the impact that he had and the influence that he's had on Tony's life, and I think he does feel bad for that. and you could see that in the interaction that they had together, and I think they needed to have that for them to reconcile later on. Final battle scene, I know I'm kind of doing this like out of chronological order, but that final battle scene made me cry because of how insane it was. It was amazing. It was so quiet, like everyone in the cinema was just silent, and then you heard like Cap on your left, everyone just lost their shit. Like everyone was like, oh my god. Obviously, reference to Winter Soldier, loved it. It was so perfectly done, and then everyone came together. We had the Black Panther crew, and everyone just started to come together, and then Rescue Pepper finally has an armor. She is badass and amazing. Rescue armor came in to fight. Think about it, like think about what she had to do. That she's so underappreciated as a character, and always has been since the very first Iron Man. She has a very young child whose dad had already had to go and fight, and she made the decision to also do that because she knew she was needed, and her contribution was needed. She saved Peter, she helped out in that battle, and she was there, and I liked that. I liked they finally put her in it. She is so amazing, and I loved the fact that she was in it and was rescued finally, and it was amazing, and I just loved her. That whole scene, they all came together, and when he said Avengers Assemble, I just cried. Like, I just burst into tears in a happy way because all of these people were together from the last 11 years of my life. I've been watching these films since I was 13 when I went to see Iron Man 1 in the cinema, and all of these people had come together, and it was amazing to see. That was one of the best moments of any film I've ever seen, and it was incredible. I also love Peter and Tony's reunion in that. That was amazing, really lovely. Although Robert Downey Jr. did post the video of the behind the scenes of that, and they cut out some really sweet moments that they could have kept in, and I was like, why? Why did you keep the Hulk dabbing, but you took out this adorable Iron Dad Spider Son situation? Why would you do that, Russos? I did love Professor Hulk. I liked that he was able to do that and come together to do that. That is something which was from the comics, and I really appreciated them putting that in. I thought it was really cool. It makes sense that he's able to use both parts of him to create an even stronger being, and it not being a burden on him anymore to be the Hulk. That we kind of got some semblance of that in Ragnarok as well, so I really did like that and thought that was really, really good. As usual, some of the lines hilarious. The Build-A-Bear line with Tony and Rocket, amazing. I loved Rhodey in this as well. His interactions with Nebula were really great. He was hilarious when they were talking about all the different time travel films, and also he talks about the Hot Tub Time Machine, which has Sebastian Stan in it, so now there's like that whole thing going around where it's like, does Sebastian Stan exist in the MCU? Is there just an actor in the MCU who looks like Bucky? Which I love. And also Tony calls Thor Lebowski, which Jeff Bridges is in, so that's Obadiah. So that was just, I liked that. That was funny. But yeah, Rhodey in this was like amazing. I really, really loved him. The whole baby Thanos thing, like just his whole interactions in this film were great. I just loved the whole dynamic of all the different ones, and I've always loved Natasha as a character. Like, she's always been one of my favorite ones, but her in this, her need to try and help, how she wants to help, what she is trying to do, the whole thing about her not having a family until this, that I loved the little banter between her and Steve when he came back from running the therapy group that he was doing. I just loved her in this. I just felt like she was really like underappreciated again, and I loved it. I also loved Nebula in this, but I have like good and bad things about the Nebula thing. I loved that we had Nebula be on their side, help with them, and also the twist that past Nebula came into it was clever, and I didn't predict it. But also, we've already seen Nebula go through the character arc of being bad and good, and we didn't really need that again. Like, she's already done that. She's already become the person that she is. Why did we need to kind of like, I know it was because Thanos needed to be there in the battle, but why did that need to happen? Like, why did she have to be bad? You know, like, it was sad to kind of see the regression of a character arc that had been built. But I loved it. I loved her and Tony's dynamic on the ship. Oh my god, like, genuinely, like, was watching that and I was like, he is like dead on this ship. Obviously I knew he wasn't, but I was like, holy shit, that was emotional. Even that made me cry. I was like, he's just like so scared in space. But then, good job we had Captain Marvel, who was barely in that film and advertised as being like a massive part of it, and let's be real, she definitely could have killed Thanos. I just didn't understand what Captain Marvel's point was in that film. Like, they made a massive deal about her being in it, and she's barely in it. And that sucked, because I wanted to see more of her and how she worked with the Avengers. And she's like in the front scene, and in that hologram scene, and then in like the other scene. I know she's helping other planets and stuff, but also, why wasn't she in it that much? Like, it was a shame not to see her too much in it. I also did love the time travel. So their logic of what time travel is like, I kind of get. It starts a different timeline, it doesn't change the future, even though what they've said since then has totally contradicted that, but you know, we'll get to that in a minute. I actually really liked that. When they went back to 2012, that was brilliant. Like, I loved seeing how they did all of that, like older Avengers and what was happening, and then after that, and then also Steve fighting Steve, the whole America's ass thing, hilarious. But I really liked that. I thought it was really funny, and I loved them going back in time, and that whole bit between Steve and Tony when they're talking about going back to the 70s, that banter between them, it was so like quick and so good between them, and I loved that. I loved kind of seeing that dynamic so strong on screen again, and it made me really happy. I just thought that it was very well done, and it wasn't like messy time travel. Obviously they did have the bit where Tony gets hit by the Hulk and stuff, but it wasn't messy, it was done really smoothly, and I liked that a lot and thought that was really good. The 70s bit, so I guess if we kind of go into like the stuff that was like bad now, I don't know if I'm saying this, like it was bad. Howard, Tony and Howard. So when they were in the 70s, I loved their whole disguises, what they did. I loved that when Tony introduced himself to his dad, he totally could have said his name was Anthony, because his dad doesn't know that he's his dad. He doesn't need to say my name's, he could have said Anthony Potts, but he's just like, I'm gonna name myself after you, Howard, which was hilarious, and I loved it. So I loved Steve seeing Peggy. That was a really nice moment, actually. That was actually one that I did enjoy, and kind of seeing her in a different part of her life from her just being old, which I think would have meant a lot to him, to see her living her life and it not being her being old and ill and barely able to remember him. Tony and Howard. Tony would have been more excited to have seen Jarvis stood by that car door than he would have been to see Howard. Howard is a douchebag. He's always been a douchebag. He was not nice to Tony. We've never seen any evidence of him actually being nice to Tony, aside from that bit in Iron Man 2 Pieces about greatest creation. And I totally get it was for closure. It was absolutely for closure, so Tony could hear what his dad was saying, but kind of like justified Howard's behaviour. That they kind of was like, well, you know, he had intentions to be good. Tony spent so many films talking about what happened to his dad, and like even in Civil War, when he finds out that Bucky killed them, he says he killed my mum, not my mum and dad, or not my parents. Like, there was always that issue there of like Howard not being the best. I get it was for closure, but I wasn't like a massive fan of the whole like, Howard. That's my thoughts on that one. Also, Thor. I loved New Asgard, I loved Valkyrie, absolute queen, but Thor, who was actually genuinely dealing with lots of strong issues. He was suffering with the aftermath of what had happened, losing everyone, what happened with Thanos, everything that went down. And that was, it was sad to see that when they've explored trauma like that so well in Iron Man 3 and then made it into a joke. That like didn't sit 100% right with me. Thor was great in this. I liked his character. I liked that you could see that he was dealing with things and that there was stuff that he had to kind of sort through, and the conversation he had with his mum was amazing and lovely, and I really liked that and appreciated that and felt like he needed that. But that was all done seriously, but then Thor drinking and having put on weight, that became a bit of a joke, and I just didn't like the way that was portrayed, because he's genuinely struggling with these things, and I think it would have been a really good exploration to kind of explore that in a way which was actually done well. And I'm not saying that those things can't be lighthearted, but it just immediately, no one sort of started to take him properly seriously because of that. And I didn't like that. There's a line where like Tony says about him not being in the right shape, and everyone laughs and they're like, haha, because he's put on weight. And you think, actually no, Tony means mentally, because Tony gets it, and he totally gets that like mentally Thor is not in a good place. And I liked that interaction, but didn't like it was sort of taken in another way, and that they did kind of make it into a bit of a joke. That just like, I don't know, I did like Korg, and it's hilarious that he was playing Fortnite. That was just ridiculous, but amazing, and I do love Korg. He is a legend. I love him. Taika Waititi is honestly amazing. But yeah, I loved that, but I don't know, there's just some of the Thor bits just didn't sit right with me. The bit at the end though, the as Guardians of the Galaxy, that was hilarious. Chris Hemsworth has actually renewed his contract, I think, so that's exciting because he's probably going to be in Guardians 3, and then if there's more Thor content, that will be really cool as well. That will be interesting to see what happens from there, because obviously Valkyrie is now in charge of New Asgard. It's all very intriguing. Okay, so let's talk about probably my biggest issue with this film, 100% my biggest issue with this film, and no, it's not the deaths. Funny that. We've all seen my trailer reaction where I was sobbing at just the thought of Tony being alone in space. No. Steve Rogers. Right. So, I am going to just be completely transparent about the fact that Steve and Bucky is something which I think could have been explored in a romantic way. But I'm not angry that it wasn't. I'm angry because what they did just makes no freaking sense. Steve has spent the entirety of the first Avenger risking his kind of position with his like Captain America role to save Bucky and could have been discharged, but he wants to save Bucky. That is all he's focused on doing. We have the Winter Soldier where the same thing, as soon as he knows Bucky's alive, that is his main priority. That's all he wants to do. He literally becomes a criminal, stops being friends with his friends, goes on the run, becomes a fugitive, literally becomes a criminal to save Bucky. It's been confirmed by the writers, but to be honest, some stuff they've been saying annoys me, but it was confirmed by the writers that when Bucky was in Wakanda, Steve did visit, and that was a thing. Like, that's what he does, and no matter what way you take that, whether you take that as friendship way, which is great, whether or not you think it's romantic, also fab, he then just left him. He just left. He goes back in time to marry the woman that he kissed once 70 odd years ago and flirted with a bit before they kissed once. And I know that she was his lost love, and it was so sad because they were supposed to, he had a date, and I get that. But Peggy had a life and a husband and children and a niece who Steve made out with, and he just goes back and marries her. And you know, I sort of was thinking in my head, okay, so he's created another timeline. That's maybe justifiable slightly if we're going to make it a bit better. But then the writers today, and I'll link the article down below, said that when Peggy always spoke about her husband and all that jazz, she was always talking about Steve, and that he was always intended to be the father of her children, which is rubbish because that's inconsistent with everything else that they've ever put in these movies. If that's the case, if it is absolutely the case that he was always going to marry her and that in this time he married her and stuff, where was old Steve at Peggy's funeral? Why did he make out with Sharon? That's his niece now. Why was that a thing? No. What happened when Frozen Steve was defrosted? What happened there? And are you telling me that he just went this whole time knowing Bucky was like captured by Hydra and was being brainwashed and tortured and just ignored it, even though he literally became a criminal to make Bucky okay and to save Bucky? He's just gonna grow old with Peggy somewhere random and ignore all the stuff that's going down, and that's just weird. That's just weird, and I have issue with it. And Bucky was sad, and Bucky knew he wasn't going to come back either because he said he was going to miss him. And I did like that, you're taking all the stupid with you. That was a good nod to the first Avenger. Steve literally was taking all the stupid with him. He took all the stupid, maximum stupid. What a stupid thing to do! Oh my god, it annoyed me so much. Like, why? Like, I love Peggy Carter. She's an absolute legend. She is one of my favourite Marvel characters. I've met Hayley Atwell, absolute queen. Amazing. Love her. But not like that. I do love that Sam is Captain America now. I also definitely do think that Sam is better suited for the role. I think him and Steve are very similar, but the Russos annoyed me with their description of why Bucky didn't need to be, saying he was damaged and they wouldn't want to give him a weapon. And it's like, are you saying that people that have been through trauma and PTSD and are dealing with that can never get past it? Is that all they ever are? Sebastian Stan explained it a lot more eloquently and nicely, talking about how in this moment Bucky is still trying to work out who he was, who he is now what he's done and who he wants to be, and giving him a label with something that's so big as Captain America would give him more issues with identity, and I really liked that and thought that was really good. I almost forgot to mention the absolutely stellar gay representation that we had in Endgame. We had one of the directors be a gay man, an openly gay man, in the therapy session that Steve was doing. He's unnamed in the credits, he doesn't have a name, this guy, but representation, it's just fab. No, that was annoying. Like, there was so much like, oh my god, look what we did, we put a gay character in it, and it's like, Nate, you don't get points for that. There's a deleted scene in Ragnarok where Valkyrie is says she's bi, and that got deleted, so that's good. There are so many people in the MCU that could be representative of the LGBTQ plus community, but no, we got the unnamed director dude being in it for 5 seconds, so you know, win for representation. On that note, should we get into the sad? Let's also talk about the Natasha and Clint scene, which was so emotional. I knew Nat was going down. It had to be her, which sucked, like, because I feel like not that we didn't care about Clint enough, but there was such a build up to that with Nat in this film, that when they were having that fight, and it was so tense, and I was kind of just like, I had a blanket and I was like having it halfway over my face because I just couldn't watch, and I just knew at one point one of them was going to go, and it was so sad. It was so sad because none of them wanted to let the other one go, but they didn't really want to go themselves, and it was so emotional. I was so sad. And like when Clint wakes up and he gets back and it's just the 5 of them, and Tony says about family, and Steve's like, yeah, us, and you see the 5 Avengers without the 6th one with them, like she always has been, and the relationship she had with all of them and how great they were, and the fact that she was so obviously missing from so much more of the film. It was awful. When Clint came back and he just fell to his knees, I'm so sad about the fact that Nat died. Like, that was really emotional and really sad. Okay. Morgan. We have known for the longest time, if you watch my videos, that Tony Stark is my favourite MCU character. I went to see, as I've said, the first Iron Man film when I was 13. It changed my life, it impacted my life. Tony and Pepper and Happy and Rhodey, that whole group, everything, Pepperoni, shipped them so much. And it said 5 years later, obviously in the film, and then we see Tony coming out, clapping his hands, and I was like, what's he doing? Like, where are they? And then we hear Morgana, and then we see Morgan, and I was given everything I've ever wanted. Married Pepperoni with a kid. Tony got everything he wanted, and they were living a life. And I know he wanted to bring everyone back. He missed Peter and everything had to happen, and I know that he wasn't gonna not do it. But Morgan was amazing. Every bit with her was so cute. The shit bit where she was like, shit, was it juice pops? And then the whole I love you 3000 and everything was so lovely. Lexi Rubb, who plays her in the funeral scene, was amazing. The bit with Happy, she just kept saying okay, and she was clearly like so confused as to what was happening. She acted that so well, and she was scared of that hologram and was amazing in just the whole film. The thought that she now has to grow up without Tony sucks. So I have so many things, like Captain Marvel could have killed Thanos, they all could have taken the Infinity Stone together and done it that way. There were so many other things that I reckon they could have done, but the Russos wanted to kill Tony, and they wanted that shock factor of killing Tony. Couldn't just have him retire. They'd had him retire. He had 5 years with Pepper and Morgan retired, so they were gonna kill him. And when we saw Morgan and they were married, I knew that the big scene at the end was not going to be a wedding. And then I knew that it was going to be a funeral. So we have the battle, amazing. He's fighting with Pepper, that bit where they're back to back, incredible. All of it, amazing. And then Doctor Strange holds up that finger. And we have the I Am Iron Man scene, which was improvised by Robert Downey Jr. back in Iron Man 1. And I remember thinking that was so cool when I watched that. And we get that, and it's great. And then Peter calls him Tony for the first time ever. We see Pepper with him, and that was so sad. The way she was saying that we're going to be okay, like he needed to hear that. He needed to know that like his wife, his daughter, like they were all gonna be okay. And then just the arc reactor just goes off. And let me tell you, in the funeral bit with the arc reactor, like I'm literally crying now, like thinking about it, because when I saw Iron Man 1 and Pepper gave him that arc reactor, I thought it was one of the sweetest things I'd ever seen, and I loved it so much. And that was so sad. That was so sad. And I was so excited that Harley Keener was going to be in this film. And then he's at the funeral, just stood all by himself. And I was like, I take it back, I take it back! And I was hysterical. I'm like sobbing into my blanket. I can hear everyone around me in the cinema just like sniffling and crying. And no. And that was done well, but so sad, and it broke my heart. The MCU just feels different knowing that he's not going to be in it anymore ever. And I watched the Far From Home trailer, the second one, and when he says I just see him everywhere, like that's what the MCU is going to feel like. He's going to be missing from it. I was joking about it for like months before, like they're going to kill Tony, oh lol, Tony Stark's dead. But I genuinely didn't actually think they were going to. There was a part of me that was so convinced that they'd never kill Tony Stark. Steve was the one that was going to die. They're never going to kill Tony. And I was really, really, really sad about that. To the point where like I don't even really want to talk about it. I get why they did it, and I get why he had to do it, and he's always been the one that sacrifices himself and saves himself and would put other people first, and I get it. I totally get it. But also, so many other things could have happened to make him not have to be the one that died. Also, I liked the bit where Peter and Ned reunited, and he walks into the school and there's barely anyone he knows, and then they reunited. That was lovely to see that he was there. I love how the whole Spider-Man cast was dusted. That's hilarious. I love the coincidence of that. That was really nice seeing them interact, and that slow kind of like walking towards each other, like, oh my god, you're actually here. Like, you are still here. You've not grown up. You've not left. Like, you are here. And I really liked that. And that was a nice scene as well. That was a sweet scene. Yeah. Peter's dealing with a lot now. I am sure there are so many other things in this film. I mean, even just thinking now, like Stanley's cameo, amazing. Tony making the joke about Morgan using Steve's shield for sledging Scott when he's trying to eat the taco and then it just lands and then Rhodey makes him jump, hilarious. And Hulk gives him the little tacos, amazing. There were so many bits in this film which I did love. Valkyrie on her Pegasus, yes please, love it. And I'm thinking of them as I talk about it. There were so many little bits, little moments, little things that I loved about this film that I thought was so good, and I liked it. I didn't leave the cinema thinking that I hated it, but there were just a couple of things which like I just felt like were really disappointing character ends, especially with Steve. Tony's made me super sad. Nat as well. Nat didn't even get a funeral. There were plot holes which you don't want to see in a finale. You don't want to see plot holes in something which is the end. You don't want to see plot holes in something which is supposed to wrap it all up and tie it all together. You don't want that.
Hi, editing me again. I also totally forgot to talk about something which isn't like anything specific in particular, but just the general overarching feeling of this film just felt really bittersweet, and in a way that I did like. Everyone did end up losing something even when everything came back. That was the case with lots of characters. Obviously we had Bucky and Steve. Scott lost so many years with his daughter when obviously he comes out of the quantum realm and Cassie is 5 years older. Obviously we lost Tony, and there's other... The Guardians still lost Gamora, Thor still lost Loki, and there's lots of different situations there, and obviously Loki did escape with the Tesseract, so there's something going on there, but there was that overarching feeling of it being bittersweet. But I didn't necessarily hate the fact that it felt bittersweet, but that's kind of the feeling that I got coming out of this film, if that makes any sense.
I would give this film 7 out of 10. I do think that my favourite Avengers is Avengers 1, Avengers Assemble. So yeah, so that was my thoughts on Endgame. I'd love to know your thoughts on Endgame, so let's all discuss down below in the comments. Please be nice to each other. It is a film and I know we love it so much, but we do have differing opinions and different thoughts, and that's great. That's what makes us human, because we have opinions and that's fun. But let's all discuss nicely together. If you guys are new here, then I make videos a couple times a week about books and fandomy things, so if you want to stick around and join us, then you can do that. And as usual, all the links to all my other social media is in the description below if you want to come and hang out with me on there. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you're doing really, 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 really well, and I love you 3000.